Hello everyone and welcome to DreamBecomeInspired.com. I'm really happy to have you here. Thanks for spending your time with us. This is our premiere week and I'm really excited to have this person sitting right next to me, because Shawn, who's here with me, is actually part of the inspiration for this site. And we are coming to you from beautiful Portugal Cove, Newfoundland, sitting out on the back patio. There's a pond right there, you can't see it, but it's there. And so I'm just going to dive right into it so we can have our first inspiration come to you so you can learn some lessons. And I'll tell you a little bit about Shawn. Have you ever met someone where they're so active and they're out doing so much stuff you feel like you should be going out and running a marathon or something? Because that's what happened the first time I ever met you. I'll never forget it. And that's because Shawn is an amazing athlete, he is an adventurer, he is an entrepreneur, and he's a sought-after speaker and trainer, and we're so happy to have you here, Shawn, so thank you so much for coming. We're just going to dive right in. I got my list of questions here to pick your brain with. So I guess the first thing, I like to describe your life as a huge roller coaster of passionate fun, because that's what you seem to be doing. Can you please share with us when you discovered what your true passion was and how that got you living your life of adventure?
Yeah, I think I started with my passion when I was really young, but didn't know it, like most people. And I'd say that most people find their passion typically between the ages of 12 and 14. And when I look back at my life, it's probably then when I really started finding some of my passions and some of the passions that have brought me where I am today. And I think a lot of it came from my parents getting me involved in so many different things, so many different sports, so many different activities, whether it's hockey, soccer, piano, you name it. And the one thing that actually really stuck was sports, but the other thing that stuck that I still do today was camping and the outdoor adventures that I gained through Scouts, through the Boy Scouts. And I went right up through the Boy Scouts for about 13 years, and when all my friends were quitting, I didn't quit because I was thinking, how am I going to go camping? I just love to go camping. And unlike a lot of people that camp as adults, my parents weren't really into it, and so that was my outlet to go camping as a child. And so the Scouts were a great start for me, and who knew that it would evolve into a career in outdoor education and guiding, and yeah, that was kind of my start of that.
Awesome, awesome. It's always fun to be able to take the outdoors and keep going with it, and I love it. So your passion has led you to many places around the world. So can you tell us of a particular trip, and I know you got a lot of stories, but for time-wise we're going to have to pick one, where you were really tested and had some difficulties and perhaps learned a really important life lesson?
Yeah, I think back, I get that question a fair bit of, what's the best trip or what's the most memorable trip, and one of the most memorable is definitely in India 2 years ago when I was leading a 30-day expedition, trekking, mountaineering in the Himalayas. And after about 26 days of really challenging travel, we had a late monsoons in India that year and washed out a ton of our trails, and we had to reroute, and we had days and days of torrential rain. So we had a really challenging course, and we're getting towards the end of it, and we're kind of winding down. And one day we had a layover day, a rest day, and one of the students went to get water down in the drainage and took a steeper path down to get water than most people were taking the easier slope down because he was in a rush and was kind of cold, and ended up slipping and falling about 30 feet on a dirt slope and broke his tibia and fibia, his lower leg. And not only did he break his leg, the tibia was exposed, sticking out of his leg.
And, that's not nice.
And we had to deal with that. And the student was actually down in the drainage for about 20 minutes by himself, yelling and screaming without anybody hearing him. And he, had everything flashing through his head. And at one point he looked at his leg and saw that there might be some bone or some rock or something stuck to his pant leg, and he picked it up and he said, well, I better wash it off, and he put it in the river to wash it off, and it got swept away, and he realized that was actually some bone from his leg. And so he screamed and screamed, and eventually some of the other students heard him and came to the instructors and were like, someone seems to be yelling for help. It's like, well, you better go check and see.
Right.
And so as we went towards the drainage, students had come back to me and said, hey, Dave's in the drainage with a broken leg. And at that point, just a wave of emotion just went over my head, and it was like, okay, here we go.
Yep.
I had been doing first aid courses for 15 years and have never had to deal with an exposed broken bone, and let alone being at 12,000 feet in the Himalayas 5 days from a roadhead with 13 students and 2 co-instructors there, and so dealing with that over the next 24 hours, he ended up being in the field for 18 hours. Being in India, you can't just call 911 and come pick you up, and we had to get the satellite phone going and had to get our drug kit out to give him some pain medication and splint his leg, and to do the evacuation we had to go through our base in India that goes through the American Embassy, goes to the U.S., the Indian National Defense, and so it was a big circle to try to get a helicopter in the next day, and so the student ended up being, we splinted it up down at the river, and we tried to get him up to a tent that we'd moved closer by, and as we were lifting him up this hill, this is about a 200-pound student, that really fit, big guy, and it was super heavy trying to get him up this dirt slope, and the best way to get him to this tent was the same way he fell down. So that wasn't very fortunate. We were trying to make steps in the dirt slope with our ice axes and things, and we were kept slipping as we were carrying him, and just as we were about to get to the steepest part, people were slipping and sliding underneath, and someone else would catch them, and at this point it was getting dark, and it was starting to snow, and as we got to the ledge just before the lip, I thought we were going to have to go back down, and my co-instructor's like, no, we got to do this, and Dave, the student, actually reached his hand up to one of the other guys on top of the ledge and like grabbed hands, was like, don't let me go, and we're holding him up, and it was just, I thought every muscle in my bone and every disc in my back was popping and on my body, and it was just a wave of emotion, and we finally got him into the tent and kind of set up a mini hospital ward in the tent and monitoring his vitals and making sure he's okay, and I went back to my tent, and my co-instructor gave me the satellite phone. It's like, here, you got a call with an update, and I said, just a second, and I just kind of took a deep breath and kind of buried my head in my sleeping bag and started to cry.
Wow.
And that was, 13 years of leading expeditions, the first time I'd ever really cried on a trip. And
wow.
I was just like, I need these 30 seconds, give me a moment.
Yep.
This is the first time that I'm not having everybody watch me and looking for direction from me in a situation I'd never been in.
Right.
I'd been in a lot of scenarios, a lot of training, but you never know what you're going to be like when you have to go there.
Absolutely.
Many people have been trained for something they hope they never have to do, and that day came for me that I had to do it. Wow. And so after 18 hours, we managed to get a helicopter in, but it didn't look like it was going to come in because that night it ended up snowing 2.5 feet. And there was no snow on the ground, and the next morning there was 2.5 feet of snow, and it was just foggy and cloudy, and then this helicopter came in around 10:30 in the morning, and it was really high and it couldn't see us, and we were like waving, and we had a big X in the snow that we made with our Kool-Aid. Right. Hopefully it would see us.
That's a very good idea.
It's like, what can we do to make him see us? And eventually it came a little lower and came in, and I've got some video of it, but it's one of the most dramatic things I've ever been a part of, is seeing this helicopter coming in, this huge Indian rescue helicopter coming in, and it's just like one of the ski movies where the snow is just like billowing up, and it's just coming in, and everybody's just hooting and hollering and screaming because we know Dave's going to be saved at this point. Right. And it was, I'll never forget that for sure.
So what was the biggest thing that you took from it? I think like a lesson in